Brilliant. I think we should get into things. So, hello, everyone. We've got a very, very busy session today. For those that I haven't met before, my name is Nick. I am the co-founder and CEO of an educational academy really focused around helping teams build AI skills into their workflows. The company is called Edify. We're part of the co-team group. And I can tell you a little bit more about some of the work that we're doing in the space of L&D. As an L&D professional myself, having worked in the space for about 15 years, I think there's a very, very exciting topic that we're going to be covering today because obviously it's a very fast-moving space and lots of stuff happening in this space. We had a little Mentimeter there at the start, just asking you sort of some of the ways that you're seeing AI impact L&D. So we can see some of the responses that have come through here. So more customized learner journeys, which is great to see. Obviously, that is the topic of our webinar today. Streamlining content creation and course development. Enabling learning at the learner's convenience. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on as well. A few of you saying nothing yet, really. That's sort of why you're here in the session today. So hopefully we can give you some really actionable tips and advice to take back to your team and making learning more fun and more interactive, summarizing content, summarizing complex learner needs into much more simplified and impactful learning experiences. I just want to kickstart today with just one quote that I keep coming back to. Obviously, we're working a lot in this space with loads of different organizations, and there seems to be this consistent fear that AI is going to replace you. And certainly, if you look at the news headlines at the moment, that seems to be what everyone's talking about. And I really want to just bring ourselves back to this, but it's that your job is not necessarily going to be taken by AI, but there is a high likelihood that it'll be taken by someone who can use AI. So really today, we're going to talk about sort of those steps that you can take to make sure that you're starting to embrace AI and you're starting to actually use these tools and have the necessary conversations within your L&D and wider HR teams. And I'm joined today by a wonderful guest speaker, Fabrizio. Fabrizio, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thanks so much, Nick. Yeah, great to be here. Thanks for having me. I am the Chief Product Officer at Hive Learning. Hive Learning is a platform that's is developing some really cool AI features to support HR and L&D efforts. I've been in digital transformation for a long time, and I've been in education and edtech for a long time. I've worked with a number of different ventures across the group that owns Hive Learning as well. So it's really exciting to be here, and I'm always interested in hearing some of that feedback, which is super helpful to understand how this sort of landscape is transforming, because we know there's a lot of new tools out there. We know there's a lot of potential and a lot of capabilities that are coming to the marketplace, but we don't know exactly where things are going to land, right? As with any sort of big seismic transformation, as we're seeing. Very exciting times.
Brilliant. And I will also just point out that whilst we are in a webinar setting today, if you have questions at any point, you can submit them through the Q&A feature in Zoom. You can do so anonymously if you like. We had some great questions submitted ahead of the session. We'll pick those up towards the end. But if there's any questions that come up throughout the session, please just submit them, and Fabrizio and I will pick those up as we go.
Amazing. Yeah. All right, so let's get started. Yeah, okay, I think I've got control now, Nick. I'd like to start with a sort of a background, a sort of a preamble. What has happened in the world before we got here? Before we got here in this moment where, last year the talk has been about AI, everything's been about AI, ChatGPT, and all the other great tools that are coming into the market. I think for everybody here in L&D, you've been grappling with this challenge over the last sort of almost 15 years now of productivity, particularly in the UK, but also globally. If you look at similar charts, we've lived through what some are starting to call a lost decade, because we broke off a productivity curve that was coming in on an ascendant, and around about the time of the global financial crisis, you can see that curve has shifted, and that since then it hasn't really come back, and you can see the gap just growing and growing there. If we look at the other trend that has been coming in the last sort of 3, almost 4 years there, we've had this massive investment coming into AI across the world, really. So with US leading the charge, that, but also in China, in Europe, and everywhere else. And you can see how that sort of steep first curve there, almost like forming a step in that chart, is what led us to the point where we are today. And now we're starting to see all the benefits that initial investment, or that accelerated investment has created. And we now start to see that coming across through into the economy and into organizations and starting to deliver more value. Now, the predictions is that that level of investment is going to continue to grow. And that's what we see as that's sort of an opportunity that meets a challenge that's been around for quite some time, really, and finally sort of brings us an opportunity to start to move back into the direction that we need to create, to create more value for everybody. The rise of AI is really impressive. I've used this chart a million times. Every time I see it, it really baffles me again, because up until ChatGPT came into the market, the fastest growing technology in the world was Instagram, which took 2.5 months to achieve 1 million users. So to reach the first million users, it took 2.5 months. ChatGPT achieved that in 5 days. And before it reached 2.5 months, which was the mark for Instagram, it had 100 million users. So you can imagine we're already talking about 100 times plus faster in terms of the rate of adoption of technology. And that's a topic that we're going to keep coming back to. And I think that's why we're all here, because we know the technology is out there, but it's how quickly can we adopt in an ethical and responsible way, and how quickly can we sort of embed into our workflows and bring this technology to support us in terms of productivity to create an exponential gain. This kind of clash of, we have a productivity gap there that we need to close, and we have this new technology. We know that every big innovation, and if you look at the human history, every big innovation brings a lot of change, and with that comes a lot of job displacement and skills displacement, right? A lot of people talk about jobs. I prefer to talk about skills. Many skills will be displaced because the technology is going to be able to do it better and cheaper and faster, but that creates new requirements for new skills, and that's what L&D is here for. So we are entering what I'm calling the largest upskilling effort in human history. We're just at the beginning of it. If you look at this is a PwC estimate, and you can see we're in wave 1 at the moment. We're about to enter wave 2 in another 12 months, 18 months, and we're going to go from where we are today, some signs already of displacement. We're going to go into a sort of 20%, 30, 40, almost 50% of impact of existing jobs. Now, when I talk about existing jobs, I always like to use the example of accountants. Accountants have existed for hundreds of years. So it's not that the job disappeared, it's the way the job is done has been changed. So back to the message that Nick mentioned right at the beginning, it's not that the AI is going to take a job, but someone using AI most likely will, if you're not keeping up with it. So accountants started doing accounting on piece of paper, and then they evolved to calculators and typewriters, and eventually to Excel, and now we're going to see another iteration. But they're still delivering value around the same skill. It's just performed in a different way and in a much more effective way. We're also going to have a number of jobs that will, almost the entirety of those skills will be displaced. And you have some estimates there in the US, for example, where you could see almost 2.5 million jobs disappearing by 2030, and obviously new jobs will be created as a result. So I think the first lesson that we get from this is for this audience here, for L&D, is that we're about to get 10 times busier than we've ever been. Okay, so if you think about what your goals are at the beginning of the year, or at the end of the year, where you're planning for the next year, when you think about the sort of challenges that your senior leadership are presenting to you, imagine that these challenges are going to be compounded. Imagine that you're going to have suddenly you're going to have to reskill a larger population of your workforce, because that's most likely what is going to happen. Luckily, as I said earlier, there are tools and there are ways that these things will be facilitated, and that's and that's where we can be the leaders, and we can be the sort of leading light, if you like, in that change. Moving on to the sort of second point here is I like to reflect on how things were done up until this technology came into play. And traditional learning has always been designed around scarcity. Like many things before technology, they're designed around scarcity. So you look at the scarce resource and then you try to optimize your framework around that. And what is the scarce resource in learning? Is the expertise, is your tutors, your coaches, your speakers. That's why you have one teacher in a classroom of 40, because the scarcity is around the knowledge, the expertise there. We also have some challenges around the growing demand. So we've got an expanding workforce. We've got increased complexity across all sectors. You have very specific requirements in sectors, and you have a lot of depth in terms of specific areas within sectors. Retail, very different from manufacturing, very different from office workers, information workers, and technology is different from the sort of commercial side and marketing and operations. You add to that a multicultural workforce that has been trained and educated in different ways, because different parts of the world educate professionals in different ways. And the cost of time spent in learning that they need to be off work. So all of this compound into the problem that we need to tackle. Okay, so we've got a lot of costs on one side. You've got scarcity that pushes those costs up even more, and also create more time for you to be able to deploy your learning interventions. Oh, I think I jumped one. Yeah. Okay, but we know that scarcity doesn't work. We know that model around scarcity doesn't work. This is Bloom's this 2 Sigma problem, which was published back in 2006, but still very popular, where he analyzed a range of students in a classroom and looked at the performance, the average performance of students educated in a classroom, and compared that with students that received reinforcement learning and students that received one-to-one coaching or tutoring. And you can see the difference here is massive. You're twice, your performance is twice as better if you have one-to-one tutoring or coaching. So in simple terms, what it means here, you take an average student and you make them excellent by giving them one-to-one tutoring and coaching. So we shift the standard all the way into the top of that curve, which is incredible in terms of productivity. And imagine if we can do this, with our employee base. We tried personas, right? So we know that, okay, we've got a big population to train, and we try personas, and we try to group them around different characteristics. But we know that doesn't quite cut it, right? You can see here, you got two people that fall in the same persona. You'd never talk to them in the same way. You never address them in the same way. And, I don't know if they do spend much time together, because some characteristics will box them into the same place, but there's a lot of other behaviors that you won't be able to capture that. And you add to that the fact that our users want more. They don't want to be a persona. They don't want something that is targeted at their age group. And they are every day experiencing a hyper-personalized service from Spotify, from Deliveroo, from Amazon. Every time you go into Google, your search is already personalized towards your history of searches. Your Apple iPhone does everything for you without, it pops up some recommendations for who you should message or for who you should call. So all this personalization is in the day-to-day of your clients, of your learners. And if we bring a sort of a one-size-fits-all, it just doesn't cut it, because their expectations have moved so far. So I'd like to stop at this point here and sort of play back to you. Like, how would you like to learn, and put it back to you. And if you could put some comments in the chat, drop in the chat. How do you think you would like to learn if you forget everything you know about L&D, and if we're starting from scratch, right? We're designing learning again, forgetting about scarcity. How would you like to learn? Not from an L&D person delivering, but how, as a learner, what are the things that are important to you? So if you could drop some comments in the chat.
Hopefully we get a few comments in there.
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, if you can see the chat at the bottom of the screen there, just click on that box and so usually when I ask this question around, people think about, it's interesting that people go very, very close to their own needs, and they might think, well, I'd like to learn on the go, and that's because they work on the go and they sort of have a very mobile life, if you like, and maybe they have work in different sites, or they work visiting clients. Other people would say, I'd like to learn in my own time, maybe because they have children. Oh, okay, Louis saying chat is disabled.
Yeah, just got on that note. Chat has been disabled, but if
right.
you use the Q&A feature, we can.
Oh, great! Brilliant.
So we
Thank
have
you so much.
personalized learning as well. Yeah. Learn by watching others and by doing. So that idea of like learning from doing, I think is really key. Learning on the job skills. Keep them coming through in the Q&A. Apologies about the moment there, but we've got.
That's great. We picked up. So cool. Learn by asking questions on the job, reflecting on topics, videos, and webinars. By watching others and by doing. Yeah, so learning with experience, right? What else do we have? Through practicality and context. Yeah, Johura, I think context is huge, isn't it? Because if you work in marketing and your colleague works in engineering, your context is very different. The examples that you need are very different. If someone works in finance and someone works in retail, the examples to connect are very different. And that brings the content to life, and that brings the concept to life, and helps you internalize that. And remember, shadowing, trying, making mistakes, and learning from them. Yeah, and I would say, I'll add to that in a safe environment, right? In a place where you know if you're judged. Research, do, reflect, and do again. Observe. Yeah. Flexibly digging as deep into a topic as I want and changing to other things that interest me. That's great. Thanks, Balas. Real scenarios. Yeah. Practicing and learning from that. Thanks, Katie. Learning through play. That's great, Thomas. I use YouTube a lot. Yeah. Reading and watching. And you can see just by looking at what people are saying here, it's very unique. It's very like you've got your own way of learning, and it's the way that you learn better. And you can't fit that into one model, right? We tried our best, but I think we got great things that can help us improve that. So I hope that capture some of the things that we've been talking about. So you want experiential learning, you want a multimodal learning, you want a video, you want a webinar, you want a podcast. I saw someone mentioning you want to read and review, or you want to see scenarios and pictures. You want something that's tailored to you, that's contextualized around you. You want it on demand. You want it when you are ready to learn. You want it accessible. You want the feedback. You want that interaction, not a passive kind of learning where you're reading something and you're not getting an opportunity to try and test and get that immediate feedback. And obviously with devices that we use and sort of the connectivity that we have, the ability to have that in any device, again, is incredibly powerful, because one of the things about learning is that when you're in the flow, you learn a lot better. And you don't know when you're in the flow, right? It happens. and then you sort of catch on, and then you make the most of that. Now, from now on, we can use AI to deliver what I'm calling a hyper-personalized experience. And this hyper-personalized experience is going to be delivered by what we call AI agents. Now, they're not sentient. They don't have any sort of human form or anything. They're essentially algorithms that do specific things in the context and in the flow of that learning. So if I start from the right-hand side here with the multimodal content builder there. So the content builder will look at that content that exists, that is made available to the agent, and will pull that knowledge from videos, from audios, from text, from decks, PowerPoint decks, from recordings and all sorts of documents, from scientific papers, articles, etc. It will pull that content and organize that so that your coach or your trainer can deliver just-in-time learning programs, right? So Content Builder will create some programs, will create some pieces of content for you, and in the same way that it consumes multimodal content, it can deliver multimodal content for you, which then your coach will put together in a way that makes sense for you in your context. The other thing that then if you look at your coach, what the coach is going to have is a memory of the conversation with you. Last time that you were learning facts about you, the sector you work, the job you do, how long you've been on the job, maybe your LinkedIn profile, and so on. And add that context to enrich that experience to you. So you can have that interactivity with a coach that gives you that experience of trying, practicing, getting immediate feedback and improving in real time. And then adding more value to that is an analytics manager in the form of, again, another sort of AI agent that will look at how you performed, how your cohort performed, and then here thinking a bit about the L&D manager who's the architect of this learning experience. They will have access to sort of more personalized reports and analysis that will help them improve the experience for the next time, suggest new topics, bring in new programs, and when I say programs, like in terms of what plan do you have for learning around your team, identify what tweaks need to be made, and so on. So we're going to see more and more of these AI agents in our workflow, and we're going to work with them just like we work with another, colleague. They're going to do very specific tasks, and they're going to be obviously very scalable and hopefully very consistent as well. So I think the second lesson there is that we must deliver individualized learning at scale. Right? And while in the past, these two words might have been conflicting, they're now possible. And there's a sort of a new technology that allows us to do that. And we can finally achieve individualization at scale. So I thought it would be helpful to show some of the, just to sort of give you a glimpse on how we're leveraging AI for our clients at Hive, which is kind of built on this thinking that I've just shared. So we have here, it's similar to what you saw in the diagram, we have sort of three AI agents. So the first one is what we call the sprint builder that helps you build a program, which is a sprint in Hive terms. So a sprint is a 6-week collection of 6-week pathways that are delivered for a cohort at the same time. And there's a number of like engagement features on the platform that help people collaborate and react to one another's comments, that kind of interactivity. But you can create the sprint based on a conversation with the agent by feeding information, and we're also building an opportunity for you to upload documents, for example. So if it's a compliance training, or if it's a technical training, or maybe you've got a chapter of a book that you find is really helpful for a particular skill that you want to create a training on, so you could use all those resources. Then the second one is the interactive coach. So the coach, which you can see on the screen that we tried, we build first in Slack as a proof of concept, and now is being adopted into the platform. So that coach will interact with you at specific points during your learning journey. So as you complete a piece of learning, you will have that coach coming to you and say, okay, well, let's think about a scenario now to apply that learning, and then and then we'll go through a scenario, and then it will ask, so what do you think you should do here? So what are the options that you have here? And then you evolve that conversation. And then lastly, as an L&D manager or as a sort of an admin of that sprint, you can look at analytics that capture not just how people have progressed through their sprint, but also the conversations they had with the coach in an anonymized format, but capturing trends. For example, where did people find concepts more difficult, or where were the places where they grasped the concept more easily, or where were the conversations that they found more engaging or more frustrating, and so on. So, this is all intelligence that then allows you to go back and refine the experience for the learner. And we're seeing some amazing sort of initial feedback and results with this. So one of our clients is a global automotive distributor, and we developed an Accelerate leadership program for them. The cohort was made of leaders, and we created 46 cards. So cards make part of pathways, and they were mapped very specific to the learning objectives in bite-sized content to help them learn and embed those skills. The whole program was developed in 1 month, and that content is designed to be delivered over a 6-month period. So it's quite an extensive program, but the ability to create that at that speed was really impressive, because that includes the time of curating the content that you're going to use and you're going to sort of input into the Sprint Builder agent. So it's very, very quickly to develop. The first 3 pathways were built in 3 days. So again, you can sort of almost produce these on demand and start to release, and then you continue producing the next and the next, and and your learners are already getting in on that journey. So imagine if you could start building content in 3 days or in a week. A few other clients. So we have a major UK retailer that's using hyper contextualization. So they use that. They use that to differentiate the program from, for example, desk-based workers versus shop floor workers. So we know that they have different ways of learning. They have different. They learn different devices. They have different context. Some of them more client-facing, some of them less client-facing. We created a whole sort of first draft for a whole skills academy for a global wine and spirits company in under a week. We got this fantastic use case from one of the largest UK health and beauty retailer who's using Gen AI content to create training for their sales team on the shop floor on, for example, for hair care professionals, on new product lines that come out all the time, all very often. How do you keep your workforce trained on that content that is constantly changing, that is constantly coming out to the market, right? And yeah, another great example is how we developed a leadership sprint based on the NPS data and feedback from them, right? So you look at the feedback and you look at the NPS data and you create a sprint based on that feedback. And essentially you're sort of bringing the voice of the learner into your training program, almost like automatically. And the last one was where we used the tools to convert Zoom sessions and slides into learning pathways. So you could take in a recording like this, take the transcript, and then create that into a learning path, into a program that can be consumed on demand, and it can be consumed in a different format, for example, on the go, on your mobile, in different ways. So this is just some of the examples. Hopefully that can sort of inspire you into ways that the technology can be applied. But I think the sort of third lesson and last is that AI is the bridge to help us finally narrow the skills gap. And many of you have been in R&D for quite some time, and you've probably been looking at that steep curve there, and always thinking, how are we ever going to close that gap? I think we finally have an opportunity that's really exciting, and tools that are starting to emerge that will help us achieve that.
Thank you, Fabrizio. We actually had a question just come through specifically about the format of the cards, with a PDF, website, etc.
The cards are specific to Hive's platform, so they will have content blocks, and the content blocks could have things like PDFs or videos or text content or image. So they're composed of content blocks. The AI generator kind of consumes documents like PDFs or decks and that kind of stuff, or recordings, consumes that and then creates that in the form of text. And then we have a sort of a human in the loop. So all of these things, they're not yet 100% created by AI. I think it's going to take some time for that to happen for two reasons. One, because the technology and the engineering around the technology needs to evolve. But two, because we want the human in the loop. We want the human to curate that the content is being created, and it flows in a nice way. And, there's always that polishing. But the great thing is that you get the first bulk of the job done, and you come in to add the nice parts of it. So it's even more pleasant kind of experience to come in and polish, the program towards the end. So yeah, the card could have a mixture of resources there, but they're a combination of what's generated by AI and a human polishing it.
Thank you. There's another question come through here about AI impacting development for more senior leaders. And maybe this is one I can pick up a little bit as well. So Hive Learning, brilliant platform, using AI to really empower sort of learning journeys and really customize content, and how you get more to that sort of one-to-one coaching, but en masse. At Edify, so we are a training company. We focus on sort of skills development, and we have a range of programs that sit all the way from very, very senior leadership. We have a one-day sort of AI for Leaders bootcamp that we run, which is much more around strategy setting for AI for the business, right down into much more functional mini labs. And I just wanted to talk about one of our programs here. I'm not sure if many people are even who are on this call today are using AI tools like ChatGPT, or Scholastic or Claude or Bard or Midjourney to actually create learning content. But we do have a program off the shelf. It's specifically designed for L&D teams over a series of 3 sprints that really helps you just starting to use some of those tools to automate the processes and the tasks that you have to do every day. And those 3 sprints, this is largely based around the ADDIE model. So if you work in instructional design, you're probably very familiar with the ADDIE model already, but it's thinking about how you can actually use AI to conduct training needs analysis, to build session outcomes, to create training materials, to translate them, and to generate FAQs, and then to measure the impact of your effectiveness. So we've just been running this program with a really big media client, Publicis Group, and you can see some of the stats there. Just out of those 3 sprints, the average participant's saying they've saved nearly 4.5 hours a week of time just by sitting through that program, and obviously really building out confidence to work with AI. So also, if you're in a position where you're not really 100% sure even where to start with AI, certainly if you want to find out more about Hive and what they can offer from a platform perspective, or if you just need something to sort of boot camp your L&D team into using some AI in day-to-day processes, definitely get in touch. And we will, if you do want to find out more on either of the things, you can scan the QR code that's on the screen there, and just submit your interest, and we will get back in touch with you. I'll also share a link to that in the chat. Keep the questions coming. There's the link there to the register your interest form. We also had a little special gift that we're going to give to you at the end of the session today, but I want to keep the questions coming in. So please use the Q&A thing there. We did have some fantastic questions submitted ahead of the workshop today. So we're going to pick those up first of all. but also just give you a chance, of course, to ask your questions to Fabrizio or I. So great question here, Fabrizio. How would AI actually be useful if e-learning is a set number of modules or units that are prescribed by the organization for completion each year when the major updates are applied?
That's a very interesting question, isn't it? Because I think some of the, and we're going to have a transition period there, but many of the ways that we deliver learning is still thinking about old models of scarcity. If you think about what is the goal that needs to be achieved here, and I suspect that it's going to start with a non-compliance training, and maybe some of the aspects of this question is covering specific sort of compliance type questions. I think with non-compliance, people will very quickly realize that you can deliver learning that is prescribed by the organization each year that is going to be more impactful, that's going to be more effective. And it could be in the form of e-learning, like for example, the way we do at Hive, it creates what you could call e-learning pathways with a sort of a heavy dose of interaction and collaboration and connectivity. So I don't see them sort of going against each other. I think they will collaborate. So AI will help you update that e-learning in a very near future, consume that e-learning as part of the content to create new content, and personalize and contextualize that better. You can still deliver the same learning objectives, but you can contextualize for the role that the person performs, for the sector that they work in, for a number of other variables.
Good answer there. Let's another great question that we had come through ahead of the session. With the GPT landscape changing so fast, how do you decide what's worth developing yourself when in a month's time, maybe, for those that have not yet played around with OpenAI's new GPT creator, essentially allows you to build a GPT in mere minutes. The technology in this space is just moving so quickly. I mean, it's kind of insane. It's kind of terrifying sometimes. But would you have any sage advice around this, Fabrizio?
It is, isn't it? It's like it does keep all of us awake sometimes. It's you got to be careful not to generate too much anxiety out of it. I think the first thing to invest in is in developing your knowledge, because to leverage these tools fully, you need a mindset shift, and that only happens by being exposed to it. So I think being exposed to it is really, you will start to feel the difference once you've seen enough of it. And once you start using ChatGPT more than Google, you're going to start to see that your neural connections are changing, and you're starting to think really and get what AI is and what it can do for you. When we're talking about, for example, we invest in developing our own features and building this into the platform. I think there is a massive, huge market for more personalized and robust tools. And if you are serving corporates, for example, the corporates are not going to want to use the GPT store, for example, with their data. So there is an element of how do you keep things ethical and compliant? How do you keep the human in the loop? I think there's something that we talk a lot about at Hive, which you won't get from the GPT store, and you won't know who built that, or you won't know if that is kind of certified to the level that you can use in your company and be compliant and make sure that the data is protected and your client's data is protected, your employees' data is protected. So I think there is a balance, and there is a market for everything, where you're going to see a lot of creativity coming through that market, but also there is a professional market where more robust solutions with a sort of scalability, SLAs, and added service will flourish.
I just want to build on that a little bit as well. I mean, we both saw this with digital transformation, but it's not really about the technology. It's very much about people and mindset and culture, and having curiosity and, being adaptive to change and trying things out, not scared of failure. I mean, these are the things that are still cornerstones to embracing AI technology, because the technology will just keep changing. So this is a very specific question about Hive that actually came through. Can it integrate with the current LMS, or is this a completely different solution? Do you want to just pick up on this one very quickly, Fabrizio? Maybe this is one we can also follow up privately.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So the Hive is a solution that allows you to deliver the programs from the platform itself. It's available on desktop and mobiles, so it's it's fully responsive to mobiles and so on. So you wouldn't. A lot of clients, because we have some very large enterprise clients like UK global banks and large retailers, for example, and also in the US. They might use that concurrently with other platforms. There are some levels of integration with HR systems, but not platform to platform in much depth. So that's something that we're exploring, and we will be reviewing the roadmap in the months to come, and we're keeping an eye on that. But at the moment, the ability to build all that content and to control that experience and to drive engagement is something that we have built into the platform, and it's harder to do it if you're doing in a third party platform. Can everyone have access to this in all parts? Yes. We have, for example, some organizations that use it not just for the employees, but for other learners outside of the business, and they can use any type of email. And what other retailers have you worked with and are using it successfully? So I mentioned there, I don't know if they're the largest UK, was it drugstore, retailer, health and beauty. So you probably guess what I'm talking about. There's one in every corner. Automotive distributor, one of the largest wine and spirits distributors as well globally. So yes, we have quite a few large enterprise clients.
Yeah. We've got two more questions that were pre-submitted, and we've got one that's come in the Q&A here, but I'm definitely keen to hear more questions. This is such a big question. What are the best, easiest areas to benefit from AI in L&D? I think, Fabrizio, you and I were talking before this session around, like, when AI comes into an existing process, that's when you see tremendous benefit. So, if you're working, you're conducting needs analysis, or you are building training programs for your organization, workshops or e-learning courses, or you are trying to, provide like more personalized coaching, whether that's pod coaching or individual coaching. When you can start to integrate AI into those processes where you are already, I think that's where you're going to see tremendous benefit. And one thing I just encourage anyone who's on this call today, start playing around with it, start auditing what you're doing. I mean, there's absolutely no doubt that AI is going to make a lot of what you do a lot more efficient. But in the efficiencies that afford you to be able to reconsider, well, where as an L&D leader do I add the human touch? How do I give myself more time to think strategically and to really consider the needs of my organization and where we're trying to get people? One last question here, Fabrizio, that's come through. Any best practices or AI usage recommendations for smaller organizations that can help drive systematic change?
I think smaller organizations probably have. It's interesting. I was doing a similar talk at Shell recently, and I had a very similar question. And I actually think that smaller organizations, in many ways, they have more, they have less red tape to implement some of these AI tools. Of course, you need to make sure that you do your due diligence. You need to make sure that you're using it and applying it in a safe way, an ethical way. But the larger the organization, the higher the risk of compliance, and therefore, the stricter the compliance is around the use of it. So I would think smaller organizations, if anything, they can start to experiment sooner. The golden rule here is start exploring it, as Nick was saying in the previous in answer to the previous question. Start exploring it with content that is not proprietary. right? When you're doing your research, when you're reviewing a paper, when you're reviewing an article, just grab that, throw into one of these AI tools and get a summary and ask it to transform in a way that you can feed into some sort of more summarized or an executive summary or in a deck. Go and play with image generation tools to create illustrations for your presentations. A lot of the illustrations you've seen here, they're created by Midjourney, because I don't search for images anymore. I just create the images that I want, and I go in AI and I create exactly what I want to illustrate exactly what I'm trying to do. So I think it's really just start embedding it into your workflow and start from the less risky part of things, which is where you're not involving user data, learner data, confidential information from your company.
And that's actually probably a good time for me just to close on this piece as well. As a thank you for attending today, we are going to send you like a how to get started with AI guide, which has got some tips and tricks in it that you can go and start using straight away, with various tasks that you'd be completing on a daily basis as an L&D professional. So if you don't really know where to get started, definitely check out that guide. We'll be sending that around as a thank you after the workshop today. Let's pick up the question that's come through in the chat, in the Q&A as well. We have the same compliance goals, all learners using the same pathway. What interests me is how AI can be used to personalize the learning experience so it's a better experience for each individual. Any thoughts around that, Fabrizio? Any work that you're doing with a client where it is very much the same sort of goal that you need to push people through, but maybe the learning style is a bit different?
Yeah, I think this is where we, in our thinking, we built that coach experience, which comes in at different points of the learning journey, and it can work through a personalized scenario with you. So the scenario can be a compliance scenario, as you probably see in several kind of the training programs, but it can certainly be personalized to your job title. It can be personalized to your sector. It can be personalized to a lot of information that is available in the platform around you. So that becomes a much more engaging experience there. Even if you need to deliver the content that is kind of the same for everybody because that is mandatory, you can still add elements that are personalized and that don't impact your compliance-ness in that sense. The learner will still complete that program. The learner will still complete all the goals, but they have a personal experience where they can express themselves. They can even say, "Oh, I think this doesn't apply to me," and the coach can sort of work through that scenario and help them understand that a lot better than what's might have been presented as a sort of a one size fits all kind of e-learning. So I hope that gives you a glimpse into how we're seeing this evolving and creating that individualized experience.
Brilliant. I think that's all the questions we've got, unless there's any others that want to come through now. We do have a few minutes left. I'm just going to pop that QR code up again if you are interested in finding out a little bit more about either the Hive platform or our AI for L&D program. If not, just a huge thank you to Fabrizio for joining me today. Definitely a very, very interesting topic, very fast-moving space. I think it's an exciting time to work in L&D. The more I'm using these tools myself, coming from a learning design background myself, I can never see a scenario where I'd go back and not use them anymore. I mean, these are whether that is, ChatGPT or Bard or Scholastic or Hive or any of these amazing platforms out there, they're really revolutionizing the way in which we do our job. And it's moving quickly, but I think it's a really exciting time. If you're a change agent and you want to get ahead of the crowd, be curious, go and start playing with it, and rewrite the job spec would be my advice. So on that note, then, yeah, thank you so
much, Nick.
Yeah, thank you, Fabrizio. And keep in contact. And we look forward to seeing you at the next one of our sessions soon.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks for having me. Pleasure. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.